Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Chris, the Urban Bourbonist, coming to you live from Chicago from the Urban Bourbon Bunker. Going to be talking to you tonight about Saint Cloud Bourbon. So we're going to have Ray Walker's going to be on, and we're going to chat a little bit about Ray. Here he is now. Ray,
Hey, how you doing?
going on, man?
Man, not much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much for coming on, and I'm excited to talk to you, and I'm excited to taste the Saint Cloud Bourbon along with you. Although we've sort of done that together already over a direct message.
Yeah, we did.
One late night.
Yeah, that was really cool. Just for everybody else watching, I was just like talking about how much I enjoyed it, and asked him what he thought about the bourbon, and just like, all right, well, I'm enjoying it now, and so you decided to open yours up, and it was really cool. That's part of what technology's for, right?
Yeah, it was really cool. So I'm just going to introduce you again here. There's a bunch of people that have come into the room. So everybody, this is Ray Walker. He's the founder and owner of Saint Cloud Bourbon. This guy right here. So far, they've done one batch, which came out, and it was in March of this year, correct?
Yeah. Well, I bottled it in March, and so it came out officially, say, around April 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. So it did fairly well, and we sold out in a matter of 3 months. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, I think I picked this up. I saw you put a post saying that one of the online shops had a few bottles left, so I picked this up. I think it might have been like Jensen's online, so I snapped this up, and a proud owner.
That's awesome. No, thank you for that. That's one of the things, we've tried to tell people throughout the process, when I was just carrying around a little cartoon example of what it could look like when it comes out. And we're just telling people, hey, look, the bourbon, looks pretty. It's great packaging, but really it's about the bourbon itself, because once you pour it, it doesn't really matter what kind of bottle it comes in, frankly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously this is an attention grabber. Like if people see this on the shelf, they're like, whoa, hey, what is this?
Right.
And then obviously if what's inside isn't any good, well then, okay, you got someone to buy it once, but they're not going to buy it again. So yeah, I mean, the packaging is beautiful, but you're right. Like what's inside is what really matters.
Yeah.
But hey, I wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. Like, can you just give everybody here that's come in like a little bit of a background, and like how where you came from, like where did you grow up, how what were you doing? I know there's some winemaking history in your background, and then what led you to where you are now.
Okay. Yeah. So from the Bay Area. I mean, from Bay Area in California, and I was in finance, and I was working at Merrill Lynch, and the start of me actually getting into wine started just because I initially wasn't interested in wine at all. I thought it was for people that were feeling like they were above other people, and it's just being somebody that's mixed from the Bay Area, that kind of a thing. You kind of see people that project this elitism and things like that, and so that's what I assumed wine was about until I got into it myself. So, getting into wine in 2005, it took me all of 4 years to leave finance in San Francisco to wash barrels and tanks in Sebastopol, California. And after I did that for about a month, I left to Burgundy to make my own wines.
Wow.
So, yeah, I did that without any executive winemaker, without any formal education, and yeah, it was like a very crazy, risky thing to do, but it went well. Ended up writing a best-selling autobiography called The Road to Burgundy, based on that, and it's just one of those things where a lot of luck, a lot of hard work, a lot of risks, and things went well out there until they didn't. And so coming back out to the U.S., I figured, hey, I'm going to try to start from the ground up, and this time do something that gives back to my family's heritage. My father, on his side, his family goes back in Kentucky, going back over 200 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted to do something that gave back to that lineage. We've been Walkers going all the way back to Ireland on my father's side, back very, very long time. And I wanted to put the Walker name out there. And so started this bourbon business to not only do something that was Kentucky, but also to blend in my winemaking background from France. So a lot of the the packaging, the elegance, the refinement, all that stuff kind of harkens back to that winemaking aspect of it, and to marry the natural history that's already there between Kentucky and France. So there you have it.
That's really cool. I love this story, and I forgot to mention that you are a book author. I saw that today, a bestseller. That's very cool about your experience going to Burgundy and starting that whole wine business. So that's very cool. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And again, for people that have come in, a lot more people have just come in. This is Ray Walker. He's the founder and the owner of Saint Cloud Bourbon. He's done one batch so far, released earlier this year. And very exciting news came today through your social channels. I saw that batch 2 is on the way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. We're really excited about getting it out there. For those that enjoyed batch 1 or didn't get a chance to try batch 1 because it sold so quickly, batch 2 is more of the same. I think it's a bit more nuanced, but it's in that same vein. So it'll give more people a chance to either try it or to revisit since they missed out on batch 1.
Okay, tell me about what is the size of batch 2 going to be like? So I know batch 1 was, 3,000 bottles or so?
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to figure out how much we're going to make the batch sizes, because I do want to do some spin-offs with different barrel finishes and things of that nature. So it's tough to say what the batch numbers are going to be until we get down to bottling it and deciding what we're going to do.
Okay, gotcha. So this is, you're working with, you're contract distilling this out of Kentucky.
Right.
And is it going to be around the same age as batch 1, like just under 4 years?
It's going to be a little bit older than batch 1 was, just by a couple of months. Yeah, and that's the basic variant of it. There will be some different spin-offs that will be older. We still have one barrel of the batch 1 that's still aging. So things like that, we're always going to have something to keep people guessing and to offer them different expressions of St. Cloud.
That's very cool. So you kind of have like a reserve barrel from batch 1, and you're gonna maybe do some more of that with batch 2, maybe some different finishes. Right. For batch 2, so batch 1 you aged in the French oak, the Limousin French oak. Is that the same for batch 2?
Exactly the same.
Okay.
And same mash bill and all that stuff. So I think that when people try them side by side, which I believe that a lot of people will be doing batch 1 to batch 2, comparing them. I think that people will see more depth with batch 2, but it's going to be very close, I'd say.
So talk to me. So there's been a couple of questions about, and this is something that like when I first tried this, I'll be perfectly honest. The two things that, and you've heard these criticisms before. The two things that were working against this was the price, and it's younger, but I still think it tastes good. And then there was the finish wasn't quite there on the bourbon. Now, however, that's changed since I've opened this. But so those are like the main things that people bring up. So can you address that? Like, how did you arrive at the price point for this? Obviously, it's a smaller batch, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the price point comes from basically establishing the brand in a certain at a certain level.
Yeah.
What we're trying to see, not just for the current bourbon, but for the brand itself. and it's a whole lot harder to, number one, be at a smaller scale and to make sense of, basically having the best packaging as you can, deciding things based on quality instead of quantity when it comes to bourbon itself, as well as the different nuances with the different levels, not just of the packaging, but how you're doing the bottling, how you're deciding to not water down the bourbon. All those things add up quite a bit. Even for example, bottling something that's say 3,000 bottles, it's a whole lot more expensive than bottling something that's 12 or 15,000 or 150,000. So those costs have to be considered. So we're able to move forward and have more batches and to do what we need to do to move forward. But as far as the exact price, how we arrived at that, myself being a bourbon consumer first, I just had to look at us being limited production, being high end, being cask proof, having the new French oak, and then the different packaging degrees that we had to look at that. But then also, we are going to be doing a lot more with the brand that is going to continue to add more and more expensive packaging, as well as the bourbon going into it is going to cost more and more as we move forward. So we couldn't start off with, say, a $50 bourbon, cut cost here and there, and then move forward and try to have a $150 bourbon where we're pulling out all the stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes sense. Like if you don't have the scale, like you said, if you're not bottling 15,000 bottles,
correct,
you don't have the scale to bring the cost down.
That's right.
On the product. I mean, you're not. It's not like you're bottling like a mass produced, like a Buffalo Trace, that you can buy for $24.
Right. No, it makes a big difference, and it's one of these things where you could easily drop down the cost, but it's just like, well, do you want the bourbon to suffer? Do you want the packaging to suffer? Do you want the brand to suffer? Exactly. Do you want to make decisions based on where the bourbon's actually placed? All those things go into the long term of what you're trying to do as a brand. And for sure, we want more people to be able to have access to the bourbon, but not at the expense of the brand.
Right, and this is all stuff that you obviously have to think about as the founder and the owner. So,
right,
yeah, I mean, I think you explained that well. It's all those things have to be considered. A question I had for you: so the company or the maker that you're contracting with, what kind of input do you have, like in the mash bill, and who else? Along with you, is giving their input onto what you're going to make.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have full I have had full control over what the mash bill is going to be, but to be quite frank, moving in these first several years, we didn't do anything that was, I'd say, way outside of classic bourbon. And so I don't think that the decisions that I made as far as the mash bill are that exciting. Things like not filtering, things as far as when to bottle, those are the things that do make a big difference, and those decisions were mine alone. And it's interesting when you get into things such as bottling, so many people are like, "Oh my God, I enjoy this bourbon, but I just wish it was at 4 years or 6 years, or it's going to be better at 7 years." And I try to tell people that, well, you don't just take an experience and then add more time or change this or change that, and then you're just adding to the experience. It's a give and take. So for me, one of the things, especially coming from being a winemaker that didn't like new oak, I'm not a big person that's into the new oak flavor. So for me, it's more important to taste the underlying mash bill, to see how the bourbon's advanced, but in a supporting way, not in a way that's just going to have a lot of oak influence to it. If over time you're just having the bourbon drying out and having a lot of tannins and you're just tasting wood, well, the thing is, anybody can have wood. Anybody can, just buy a barrel, and that would be the deciding factor on what people are actually tasting. And so for me, it's like something being produced that's being young when it reaches people, that's actually advantageous for people that want to try the mash bill and see what's so unique about the bourbon, because as things age, they begin to seem more like the others.
Yes. You know what? That is, wow, that's really good insight from you on that. That's really cool. Someone asked a really good question here. So when you were choosing like who you were going to contract with, did you have a specific place in mind, or did you try several different places before you said, "Hey, I want to go with these guys"?
Well, so that's another interesting thing, and I learned this through making wine. It's an interesting thing you can take from somebody else's work and take from their playbook. And if you say, okay, they're successful, or I like their bourbon, and I'm just going to alter this one thing or these two things, and I'm sure the difference is going to be this or that. You can't do that scientifically. You can't do it, because as soon as you change one variable, you change the whole test, right? The control's flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, yeah, I tasted a lot of bourbon. I worked with a lot of different people trying different things. But at the end of the day, I just had to go with my gut and make a decision based on that, because I knew that the decisions I was going to make, bottling something that was going to be on the younger side, having it high proof, having it not filtered, there wasn't something that I could already taste on the market that was going to be like that. So I couldn't project out and assume how things were going to taste. I just had to, basically jump off a cliff and hope everything was going to work out.
Yeah, make your decision and then roll with it.
Yeah, and that's honestly the best you can do. So when people are saying, "Oh, I have this plan or that, and I'm just going to make these alterations," it's like, well, you're fooling yourself, because you have plans just to say that you have a plan, because things change.
Yeah. Ultimately, you don't know what's gonna end up happening.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff, I think people try to kid themselves when they say that they know what they're doing, and they know what the results are going to be, and it's like, just make a decision. Like that's the best thing. Make a decision and move forward. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Let's see. Someone I think has a good question here too.
How does
So coming from a wine background, what is it? What is it like having to use a new charred white oak barrel in order to call it bourbon? Like, what's the how is that? Like, what is it like for you using that type of barrel compared to what you were using with wine?
I think with a toasted barrel, it's much more linear. When you're making wine, you can have, if you have a new oak barrel, for example, I would. Part of the reason why I didn't like new oak was you fill up one of those barrels with water, and maybe like 30 minutes later you dump out the water, and it's already brown. It has all these oils and stuff like that coming from the barrel, and that immediately is soaked into the wine or mixes with the wine.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with used oak barrels, it's way more linear. 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line, the oak is really hard to see. But when you're dealing with charred oak, it's really different, because you're getting this huge impact of color as well as the aromas immediately. So for me, when people are saying, "Oh, I don't really see a lot of the oak on this young bourbon," it's like, I definitely see it, because you don't see it unless you've had new make.
Yeah.
And once you've had new make, you're like, definitely there's definitely already enough barrel on this. But for me, it was interesting to see just how sharp of a ramp up in barrel contact, and what that made as far as how the bourbon reacted. It's far sharper than what happens with wine.
Yeah, and did you do the batch one in 53-gallon barrels?
Yeah, well, it was in standard. It was in 228s, 228 liters.
Okay.
I don't know what that converts over to, but it's close to standard.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and so somebody asked me as far as the sweet spot.
Yes.
Right.
Good question.
Right, and so for me, it was one of those things where I knew that the bourbon was in a place that I enjoyed drinking it, and I wanted to be able to get it to market for people to be able to have that expression of it. And if I was going to be doing things such as extended aging on one of the barrels, such as what we did, or doing other spin-offs in the future, I thought that would be good. But to establish a baseline, I felt it would be good to be at this 3.25 mark or what have you, just so people can be introduced into the brand, into the thinking behind the brand,
Yeah.
and what they can expect moving forward.
I think that, I mean, you're offering great insight for everyone here, and for me into the whole process. It's really, really cool to hear, like, from your point of view, how, like, all these things that you have to think about. For that barrel that you're reserving from batch one, are you constantly going back to that and tasting it, or do you have an idea?
No.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. I guess my inexperience and my curiosity kind of work hand in hand on this, right? Because it's like, and I used to say this before with wine, right? You don't need to check on it all the time unless you're ready to make a decision about it, right?
Okay.
So, and I think that's true in life. You know, if you're going to check on something and poke it and rearrange it and analyze it, it's like, that's fine if you're prepared to make a decision about it. Otherwise, you're just being nosy, you know? So for me, I know I'm not ready to bottle that bourbon.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be, in which ways it'll be different than the regular batch one, but it's one of those things that I'm more curious and I'm more excited to let that curiosity unwind than to just check on it and check on it and check on it.
I like that, and I love the analogy that you made to life.
Right.
That's
true, right?
It is true. It is true. Okay, so let's take one more question here. The Brothers Bourbon is coming with the great questions tonight. So what insights did you gain from batch one that you applied to batch two, basically? Did you make any adjustments? And I think you already answered that you did not make any adjustments. But what about in terms of like storage in the rick house or anything like that?
Made no alterations. What became clear to me, as far as what I learned, was that, hey, we're doing the right thing. I think it's one of those things that when I was tasting the bourbon, when I was giving samples out to family and friends and things like that, I had people that were, saying that the barrel. And that gave me a lot of faith in releasing it as I did. And the thing is, you don't know how the market as a whole or by large is going to respond to you being a young bourbon, having it young and foolproof and not filtered. You have no idea how people are going to respond to that, if they're going to be mixing it, or if they're going to be doing ice cube or neat or with water or what have you. And so you have no idea how each of those situations, if people are going to think that you're an idiot or if you're a genius or anything, right? But with seeing how people reacted with batch one and seeing how many people were speaking to the drinkability of the bourbon, as well as making comments about the texture and the aromatics, this really it really hit home for me, because it proved that we're on the right path.
Yes. So let's talk about batch one and maybe taste it. Let me tell you, like, what I initially tasted, like when I first had it. I wrote down notes, and we talked about this a little bit over direct messaging, and so for me, it was very fruity. Oh, did we lose you?
Okay, sorry about that.
All right, no worries, you're back.
I'm listening.
So initially when I first opened this, it was like lots of fruits, apples, summer fruits on the nose and on the palate, and then because of the barrel strength, you got a nice dose of that, like clove and cinnamon and that heat, and it was excellent. But then the finish dropped off fairly quickly. But now I've had this open for, I don't know, a month or so. I've gone back to it a few times, and like we talked about this. I feel like everything has been amplified. Like
Mhm.
all of the aromas and the flavors are amplified, and the finish now is sticking around quite a bit longer than it did initially after it was first opened. So that tells you right there that, I mean, the airtime, allowing it to be open, definitely is improving the product for sure.
Right.
So I think you're definitely on the right path. Just
Yeah.
those qualities right there.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Again, this is one of the things that we can't plan for. There's no other. I don't think there's other bourbons that really are in that exact segment as we're in, that I know of. I mean, I would try them if I knew of them because I'd be very curious. But it's one of those things where I think all too commonly when people are drinking a bourbon, they crack open the bottle and they think, hey, what they're tasting is what they're going to get. That's going to be the complete experience. And, air does a whole lot to, well, pretty much anything, right? But
Yeah.
when you're looking at spirits, especially high proof bourbons, I mean, you're talking about a lot that needs to uncork itself, unpack itself, and there's a lot of benefit through aeration. And one of the things I was going to do was let people know, hey, there's a lot of people that try to shake the bottle when there's a high proof bourbon to let some of the oils mix up, let it kind of open up a bit like that. But that's in a closed bottle, right? So
Yeah.
in order to mix things up more thoroughly, I think people should put the bourbon in glass, either stir it up a bit or something like that to agitate it. But if nothing else, let the bourbon rest there enough time so there can be enough interplay in between the bourbon and air.
I like it. Yeah, and it's certainly done a lot for this. Do you wanna pop it open and have a taste together here? Talk about it a little.
No, I don't. Of course. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, let's see.
By the way, really cool cork on this guy here that mirrors the bottle. And for people that have come in, again, we're talking here with Ray Walker. He's the founder and owner of Saint Cloud Bourbon. Thanks again, Ray, for coming on. Really appreciate it. I think you've offered like a lot of great insight to people that have come on. There's been a lot of great questions that you've answered. So yeah, let's give this bad boy a taste.
And thanks for having me on too.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll bill you later.
So I do love the color on this guy. It's really nice. Like a nice coppery amber color. It's beautiful. I did have a taste before we came on.
Just one taste?
Just had a little taste before we came on. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing that I've always gotten out of it, but just like a lot stronger. And it's like, for me, I get a ton of apples and a ton of like those summertime fruit flavors on the essences on the nose. Like, do you know juicy fruit gum?
I do know juicy fruit gum.
Yeah, so
yes.
that's like a little bit of like what I get on the nose of this is like juicy fruit gum. Which
you know how many sticks of? I'm so glad you said. You know how many sticks of juicy fruit gum I had to put in the barrel to make that happen? That's how we do it.
Where it's coming from.
That's how we do it.
It's but I get that, and even like a hint of like mint on the nose too. But all right, I'm gonna give it a taste. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Yeah. So it's just that blast of fruit for me.
Yeah.
And then just followed by a nice hit of cinnamon and clove. You get that barrel strength coming up a little bit and biting you a little. It's really nice.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I think for me, when people were making comments about the finish, it's interesting for me because it lingers quite a bit for me. And as far as the fruit, I've always gotten warmed stone fruit like plums, apricots, and I think that my apricots might be your juicy fruit.
Yeah,
It has like a citrus kind of a component to it, and that's what I used to love about the juicy fruit gums. You know, it's like it had this brightness to it, but it also had a lot of depth to the actual flavor.
yeah.
So that's what I get.
And by the way, speaking to the finish, that first sip I had still going. So
Right.
it's definitely improved over just being open for a month. So yeah, I mean, it's really a nice bourbon. And yeah, and I think I was telling you that night that we were DMing that, like, when I taste it, I get those summer fruits, and it's not like it's sweet, but it's like the essences of all of those fruits together in a basket, and it's really well balanced, because you get that fruit essence, and then that pop of the cinnamon, right, and the peat and the white pepper from the barrel strength. And yeah, honestly, for being this is 120.
Yep, unofficially it's 120.8.
And man, it's pretty easy to drink.
That's because we're alcoholics.
It's like dangerously easy to drink, even at that proof. So I like it. It's really nice.
Thank you. Nice. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that it wasn't filtered, and the fact that it's barrel strength. I think actually helps, because there's a certain component of the natural oils that would be in there that obviously get broken down with the chilled filtering that some people do, but also when you water down to 95 or 100 or 110, whatever you're doing, you're breaking down a lot of those oils that are naturally there that would make for a much smoother pour. So when you go barrel strength and you don't filter or anything like that, you're getting everything straight from the barrel. And most importantly, you get aromatics, but right behind that, I'm sure it's the mouthfeel. And I think that's it's one of the things I rarely tell people when they say, well, why would I buy your bourbon, or what makes it interesting or unique? And it's not a common thing to sell bourbon on mouthfeel or aromatics, but I think that's the things that really stand out for us.
This does have a great mouthfeel. I mean, it coats like the roof of my mouth completely, and like it's still there after I took the sip. Like I can feel it on the roof of my mouth. So it definitely has a really nice viscous mouthfeel to it, for sure. Someone's asking about ice, and I can say from my experience, like a piece of ice in this, or even a few drops of water, just make everything open up even more, and just it amplifies the flavors. So if people like to drink it that way, for me, it works. It works for this.
Yeah, I'm not getting any more comments on my side. Let me see. There you go. I don't know. But the thing, it's funny, when I first started down the road, I've been drinking so much more bourbons neat, which I generally did, but I wasn't so careful to make sure I did so. But I had to study what everyone else was doing to see what was on the market, and so I became very focused on just having everything neat. And so when people say, oh, I want an ice cube, or I want to put a little bit of water in, it's just like kind of think like, oh, you're messing with the natural effect and experience. But it is true, it actually does really go well with ice. I do have to admit that.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to just take I take a few drops of water. I have a little straw here, and even just like 3 drops of water in it, and let it, and swirl it around, and it opens everything up, and everything comes alive even a bit more. So it's nice. You did a good job, man. And I'm looking forward to batch 2 for sure. So you said Q4. Do you have any idea within Q4? Like maybe is it going to be November, or what do you think?
We're trying to bottle at the end of October or early November.
Okay.
So I still have to hear from my bottling people to see when we can fit in. There's a lot of handwork that goes into the packaging because everything is placed on by hand. So that's one of the things we're still trying to, figure out as far as scheduling and all that.
And what can we expect out of the package? More of this?
A little bit less of that, actually.
Okay.
We are one of the issues that we had with the packaging was the vintage tag around the collar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things where Stranger and Stranger did a hell of a job doing the design, but it's one of those things where the designers did one thing, but then the practical usage of that once it goes on the bottle, there's so many angles to that
Yeah.
Some clients might receive their label and it was coming up a little bit or that kind of a thing, and we just want a cleaner package. So
Okay.
we'll be getting rid of the shoulder label. So still thinking about what we're going to do beyond that, but I think that's one of the things that I think highlights the cleanness and the minimalism of the bottle.
Yeah, it's definitely I mean, you can tell you put thought into this. I'm assuming you're more of a minimalist type of guy based on the design. It's a beautiful design.
Thank you.
Obviously, what's inside matters the most, which is really good. What I like to see is when you say it's not filtered. I've got some nice sediment in my bottle, which I love to see that when I pick up a bottle. So that's really cool. I mean, you did a really great job on this. When batch 2 goes for sale, how is that gonna go up for sale? Where can people find it?
We're still going to have an online boutique.
Okay.
Because we did well with that the first time around. We have distribution, typical or traditional distribution, that's in Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as New Orleans. So we're going to continue with that as well. We don't have anybody outside of those states, but the good thing is that the online store that allows is folks like yourself that are in places outside of those areas, like Illinois and
Mm-hmm.
Florida, all that kind of stuff. We can still reach those individual clients. So we are looking for more distributors, as long as we have enough inventory to take care of that. It's one of those things where we sold out just with those 2 importers, and then New Orleans got attached at the end with a small amount of cases, but they sold out within probably a week.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of it.
Okay, and the last question we'll take here from the crowd is it going to be along the same lines of price point?
No, it's going to be 4 times. No, yeah, it's going to be the same.
Okay, so we're looking at like around $100.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, if you're in for example, Kentucky, I think is going to be at $89.99 again.
Okay.
I don't know what they're going to do with the prices. There's already been some people selling it for a lot more.
Oh yeah.
Right, and so we've already seen movement on batch 1 now that it's sold out with stuff moving around. But Tennessee, I think, is maybe around 110, 105, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally around that amount.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, Ray, thank you very much for joining me. It was excellent talking to you. I think you offered some great insight and answers to a lot of the questions that came in. Thanks very much. Batch 1, excellent. Looking forward to batch 2. Let's get together again once batch 2 comes out and do another chat.
I'm all for it.
All right, man.
Let's do it.
Hey, cheers to you. Have a great night. Have a great rest of the week.
To you too. And thank you for everybody that watched it as well.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. Take care, Ray. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Okay, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that. That concludes the interview with Ray Walker from Saint Cloud Bourbon. I think it was a great time. He offered a lot of great insight and answered a lot of really cool questions. Thanks to everybody for sending in your questions. And hopefully, once batch 2 comes out, we'll get ready to come back on and talk about that and do a little tasting as well. So have a good night, everybody. Cheers. Take care. Peace.